Welcome to this lesson on division using both break-apart division and traditional division. It is beneficial for you to know both ways of doing it because each way is easy in certain situations. For example, this problem, 860 divided by 64, is good for both ways, but you're going to find certain problems where break apart is going to be a lot easier, and there are going to be certain times when traditional division is easier. So you need to know both ways. Just as it is beneficial to know multiple ways to get to your house, it is beneficial to know multiple ways to do division. So our lesson today is how to do both traditional and break apart division. So to start with, we're going to start with the break apart division. And with both problems, you set them up very similar. You obviously go 860 divided by 64. Setting it up is important. A lot of people might say, oh, okay, well, it's 64 divided by 860. And those two problems are very different. What it's asking us is 860 divided by 64, not 64 divided by 860. So I'm going to erase this and get back to our problem. Now, break apart, you're essentially breaking apart the division. With a break apart method, you never, ever, ever have to divide again. If this is the way you'd like to do for the rest of your life, you will never, ever have to divide, which is kind of neat. But you will have to multiply. So I'm going to show you how to do that. The best thing to do is draw a line over here. This area right here is going to be where we're going to mark down our answers to the breaking apart of the division. So the first thing what we need to do is we need to think about 64 times what is going to get us close to 860. Well, I really don't know that answer off the top of my head, but I like to deal with numbers such as 10. So I know that if I put a 10 over here, I know that 10 times 64 is 640. I then subtract, because I've eliminated 640 of the possible 860. I know that I now have 220. Now I know I can't do a 10 again, because 10 would be too much. Let's see if maybe 5 would work. So if I do a 5 over here, I know that 5 is half of 10. And I know that if I know that 10 times 64 is 640, I know that I can just take half of that. Well, let's see, 5 times 64 would then be 320. Well, that's too much. So I know that 5 is a number that doesn't work. It's too much for us. Well, let's start with maybe 2. Usually 2 is an easy number for us to multiply with. So I know that 2 times 64, you multiply basically, or you add 64 plus 64. I know that it is what? 128. I then subtract because I'm eliminating the numbers that I need. By subtracting, I know that I'm going to have to borrow in certain situations. So I can borrow here, make that a 1. 10 minus 8, 2. Well, now that I've borrowed, I have a 1 here instead of a 2. So 1 minus 2, that doesn't work. That means I need to borrow from over here. Make that a 1. Now this becomes an 11. 11 minus 2 is 9. I know that 1 minus 1 equals 0. So I know I'm left with 92. Can I do a 2 again? No, I can't. So I know that the only number that I can do is 1. 1 times 64 is 64. And when I subtract, I know that 2 minus 4, I can't do it, so I need to borrow. So now 12 minus 4 is 8. I know that 8 minus 6 equals 2. So now what do I do? Well, I know my answer here is 13, and I have a remainder, and my remainder is 28. That is a good way to do the break apart division. Now we know that our answer is right here. So let's see if it works when we do the other way, which is the traditional division. So we knew that our answer was 13, remainder 28. Okay, let's do the same thing. We set it up just like we have always done. So 860 divided by 64. When I do this, I don't need to make a long line on the end of my division sign. What I'm doing is I'm doing it a traditional way. Well, here's how you do it. First off, you say, how many times does 64 go into 8? Well, it can't. So we just put a 0 there. You can also leave it blank. How many times does 64 go into 86? Well, I know it only goes into it once. So I know I can put a 1 there over the 6 in the tens column. So I know that 1 times 64 is 64. And then I subtract. Don't worry about that 0 quite yet. We'll get to it. I know that 6 minus 4 is 2. I know that 8 minus 6 is 2. When we're done with that, what we do is we bring down the 0. I know that that's 220. Now, at this point, I got to ask myself, well, how many times does 64 go into 220? Well, I don't really know that. At this point, you might say, well, you know what? This way's kind of hard. Maybe the break apart division was a little easier for me on this particular problem. But for this particular problem, you can see that what we need to do is take 64 times something to get it to 220. Well, I know that 64 times 3, right, because I know my answer is 13 with the remainder 28. So I know I'm going to do 64 times 3. Well, I knew 64 times 2 was 128. So I'm going to add another 64 to that. So 64 plus 128 is obviously 12 here. 6 plus 2 plus 1 obviously is 9, and a 1. So I know 192 is my answer. We know that we're going to subtract, and from there we know that it is obviously a remainder of 28. So that is how you get a remainder of 28 there with your answer of 13 remainder 28. Hopefully this was very helpful in showing you which way is beneficial towards you. You probably notice that the break apart is easy, but again, the traditional is another way to do it also. Thank you.